everybody, welcome to our second workshop of the spring 2020 semester. My name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. I'm so happy, I'm so excited, I'm so grateful to have you here for our second workshop. I am pumped for you to experience our guest speaker later on this evening. But before we get started, I want to touch up on a couple of quick points. So you are starting your mentor relationship. That is awesome. Hopefully you've had your first conversation. I'd love to learn about it. Post maybe about some of the key talking points that you've had for your first meeting in the comment section. Would love to learn about how that first meeting has gone. But yeah, this workshop's all about how to network in a genuine way and really make the most out of it. This workshop should be about an hour long. And if you've got any questions during this workshop, please post them in the comment section. As a reminder, I'm going to ask you 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Once we have asked those questions, I'll expect you to answer them. That's how you get credit for participating and being here at the workshops. I'm really excited for you to experience our guest speaker tonight. I'm really excited to dive into this. Now, this is what's really key. I mean, genuine networking is such a pivotal component to building rapport, to getting job offers, to getting promotions. Really, if you can hone this skill, if you can hone this ability, you will be set professionally, because ultimately, at the end of the day, your hard skills, that being your ability to crunch numbers, to do some form of engineering, to do some form of science, like all those things are pretty good. They're very easy to measure. So it's very clear whether or not you are better or worse than somebody on a hard skill. But your soft skills are much more difficult to measure. But those soft skills are really what's going to set you apart. I mean, as they say, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And this is the workshop about how you can know more people and have a stronger bond with them, because then it goes to your reputation. Because if you have a reputation for treating people like garbage, you're not going to have a great reputation. People are going to want to help connect you with other people. If you come in with low energy, if you come in with a bad state, if you come in talking trash about other people, you're not going to put yourself in a good position. And so I want to be very clear. When it comes to networking, when it comes to building a relationship, it is not all about the transaction. If you're coming into a networking situation, you're thinking to yourself, what is in it for me? You are not going to have a positive outcome. I promise you on that. I really want to be clear. It's not all about landing the job or the internship. Sometimes it's about building the relationship and then playing the long game, because ultimately that may turn into an opportunity because they built a rapport with you. But if you burn them, or if you make them feel like you are using them to get to a location that you would like to be, they can smell that on you. They can smell it from a mile away. And that is not great. As they say, desperation reeks. You do not want to be desperate. You don't want to be perceived as someone that's a user or a taker. You want to be a giver. You want to be someone who gives energy to relationships. The first place to start is being genuine with how you talk to people and how you build rapport with people. Now, this is something we talked about last time, but it is so important, and that is the 3 keys to success in this program. That is honing your strategy, your story, and your state. As we've said before, your state is most important. So physically, how are you? Physically, what is going on with your world? Physically, I don't care what is happening. If you recently broke up with your significant other, if your dog just died, if you got some bad news, I don't care what's going on. If you get up, if you shake it out, if you let it loose, you will get yourself into a positive state. So I want to challenge you to do that right now. I want you to get up, and I want you to shake it loose. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just go, yeah, just let it out, let it loose, let it go. Because what you're doing is you're releasing blood to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself into a state conducive for retaining information. If you're just sitting there on a couch or in a chair in a slumped over position, your likelihood of retaining any of the information we talk about tonight is severely diminished. But if you come in standing up, moving around, getting your blood flowing, you are much more likely to retain this information. Have you ever found it difficult in a classroom setting to remember what your professor says if you've been sitting for 3 hours? That's why 3-hour lectures really struggle to work. They're not very effective because people are not moving around. Your brain needs blood to retain information. So get up, get moving, get out, get loose. Now, the second key is your story. What is the story you tell yourself for why you will or will not be successful? I promise you right now, you will achieve up to the goals that you set for yourself in life and no higher. So you might as well shoot for the stars and land on the moon than shoot for the moon and end up in nowhere. Because if you are not focused about where you want to be, or really having a big, hairy, crazy, audacious goal for yourself, what are you doing? Like, are you just saying to yourself, like, I'm cool with winding up short, with, settling down and just settling for everything in my life? If that's the case, this program's not for you. I can tell you that right now. This program's not for you if you're trying to settle. But if you're someone that wants to go for it, if you want to go big, if you want to go out there for the opportunities that you want to see in your life, this program is absolutely for you. Let this program be a springboard. Let your mentor be a Sherpa that's guiding you up this mountain of life and success and help you get to where you want to be. This is someone who wants to guide you, that wants to help you. They wouldn't have signed up for this program if they weren't interested in seeing you succeed. So I want to be very clear with you. What is the story for why you will be successful? Understand that, hone it, be prepared. In fact, I would challenge you to write this down. Write it on a piece of paper. It's more likely to stick in your mind if you write it on a piece of paper of where you want to be. Stick it up on your wall. Stick it up on your desk. Stick it up on your dresser. Stick it up on your mirror. Something that's going to remind you of where you want to be in 1 month, 3 months, 1 year from now. That will help you set the target of where you want to go. Because if you don't set these goals, you're going to be on a path that's got really no clear outcome of where you want to go. So the last part is your strategy. What are you going to do to set yourself apart? Now, when it comes to strategies, I'm a big believer in routines. When I say routines, I mean literally getting into a daily habit that you can practice regularly so then you can be better at a skill. We think about habits sometimes in a negative light because we think about people just being addicted to bad actions, but I believe that habits can also be attributed in a positive light as well. What is a positive habit you can get into to help you build more genuine relationships? I believe one thing you can do is to be intentional about having an informational interview every single week with a new person, with a new professional in your field. You can leverage LinkedIn. You could go to a professor's office hours. You could talk to a friend of yours whose parent works in the field that you're interested in working towards, or a family friend that you know works in the field that you're interested in working towards. If you set up one informational interview every single week, and by an informational interview, I want to be very clear. This is a conversation. This isn't an interview. You're not trying to get a job from this person. You're just trying to get knowledge about what this work is like. Set up one of those a week. I can promise you they're going to start making introductions for you. They're going to start helping you get to where you want to be. By the way, if your goals change over time, that's okay. That's totally okay. You can share with them how your goals have changed. They're going to want to keep helping you over time. I'll give you a perfect example of this. As an entrepreneur, I set goals all the time. I have a board of mentors. I literally have about 50 to 100 mentors that I send once every 3 months an update of what's going on with the business. Here's the thing though. I've pivoted this business many, many times. Now, initially when I first got started, I was thinking to myself like, oh, well, they're my mentors. Like, if I tell them that I've pivoted, will they think I'm a total failure? Will they not want to help me anymore? What I found is that is absolutely not the case. They're always there to support me. Mentors that have been with me for 5+ years still give me guidance, still help make introductions, still help me out and support me as my mission has grown, as my goals have grown. That is the nature of mentoring relationships. That is the nature of relationships in general. You should keep your network up to date with what is going on in your world because they will want to see you succeed. But the key is that you ask them for something specific. When I meet with my mentors or when I send them an email, I ask for something very, very specific. I don't say, hey, if you know anybody in XYZ space, if you could introduce me, would love that. Why? Because it's not at the top of their mind. What I'll do is I'll physically go onto their LinkedIn profile, look at who they're connected with and say, hey, I noticed that you're connected with Jane Doe, John Doe, Shelby Doe, and Jenny Doe. I know that you may not be connected with all 4 of those people, but if you are connected with one of them, would you mind introducing me? Here's an email template that you could copy and paste to introduce me. Now I've made it extremely specific and easy for them to take an action step to help me out. And that is how you can continue to grow your relationships, your network, and build rapport with people. And just keep them in the loop of what's going on in your world. So I just want to be very clear. It's about building genuine relationships. And it's about when you're building those genuine relationships and then you're asking them for introductions or connecting with more people through those relationships, being very specific and making it as easy as possible for them to help you out. I really want to stress this. It's so important. Genuine networking. If you can take anything from this whole program, if it's genuine networking, and by genuine networking, I mean really listening, taking an active and keen interest in who you are speaking with, you are going to be set. You're going to be in a great position. Because at the end of the day, it's not your elevator pitch. It's not going to be anything about you that makes someone interested in you. It's going to be about your ability to listen to them. In fact, I can tell you multiple times where I didn't say a word in a conversation. I just nodded my head yes and asked questions about things that somebody else has said. And at the end of the conversation, whether that be 30 minutes or 60 minutes long, they said, man, Garrett, you are such a great conversationalist. Or, gosh, I feel like I just had such a great conversation with you. And the funniest thing about it is I didn't actually say a word. The point is this: people love to talk about themselves. Why? Because people are really interested in things that they're interested in. People wouldn't choose to spend the time that they have on this earth in the way that they did unless they thought it was the most optimum way of spending their time. Therefore, things that interest them, things that they choose to spend their time on, are things that interest them and ultimately make you interesting to them because you've taken an interest in those actions and activities. I hope that makes sense. If you want to rewatch that, take that back 30 seconds because I think it's really important. People ultimately, at the end of the day, people care about themselves. People care about things that they are interested in because they've chosen to spend the time that they have on those tasks. So with that said, I'm excited to jump in to our guest speaker this evening. Really, the whole point of this workshop is about genuine networking. If you've got any questions for myself or for our guest speaker, please post them in the comments section. By the way, if you have not connected with me on LinkedIn, please do. I'll add you to our LinkedIn group where we discuss different topics and just you can add different topics, ask any questions, and expand us to our entire Ambition in Motion network. Connect with me. I'll add you to the group. But yeah, I'm so excited to get started. Let's jump into our guest speaker this evening. So I'm so excited to transition into our guest speaker this evening. Our guest speaker is actually, our topic of our workshop this evening is how to network in a genuine way, is actually a connection from a guest speaker who was our guest last semester. So I'm so excited to have Janice Porter here. Janice is awesome. Janice was a teacher. She was a corporate trainer, and she now coaches business professionals on networking at a mastery level and how to turn connections into new business, or for college students, how to turn your connections into job offers, internship offers, and just professional opportunities. Janice is naturally intrigued by humans and why people do what they do and how they can build connection between each other, deep rapport with each other. I'm so excited to have you on, Janice. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Garrett. It's a pleasure. I hope that I can answer the questions for your audience that you need to have answered, and you're talking about one of my favorite topics, so it's perfect.
Yeah, so you are a master networker. You are somebody who really took the time to hone your craft when it comes to meeting people, building genuine rapport, and ultimately just having deep connection with others. How did you get to this point? What is your story? How did you know that this is what you were passionate about? And how did you get to this point in your life and your career?
How long do you have? No, just kidding. I'll make it brief. Don't like to talk about myself all that much, but basically my background is teaching and training, corporate training. And, to be a teacher, you always have to be able to listen and pay attention to what other people have to say, and also be aware of whether what you're saying is being absorbed by people. So you need to know whether whether they understand how you communicate. So I was a teacher for many years. I did corporate training, and then, like a lot of people in my generation, when the world changed in the mid-2000s, some of us lost our jobs, and I have to admit, I wasn't a job kind of person. I was a contractor in my training situation by choice. But what happened when that ended is I had to figure out a way to reinvent myself, and I didn't want a 9-to-5 job. So that took a little bit of time to figure out what was next. And what I started by doing was networking. I went to, and it was really actually at the beginning of all of that type of socializing, networking, go to Chamber of Commerce events, go to specific network events. And what I found is, and this is how it all started really for me, is I am a curious person by nature. And I think that is a really cool thing to have, because if you're curious, you want to know. You just want to know what other people are about and what they do and how they do it and whatever. So that was a constant for me, always asking questions and finding out and learning a lot in that way. So that's how it started for me. And I became actually kind of that connector person, the hub. You want to always be that person who people say, oh, you want to find such and such? Ask Janice, she'll know somebody. And that's how it kind of started. And then eventually I started teaching people how to do it. So yeah, that's
I love that. I love that story, Janice. That's so cool. So you became a master networker out of necessity because that's what your life necessitated. You were at a point where it's so funny. I think we kind of talk about this in our workshops. I mean, I share my story of how I was a drug dealer who got caught, and I, needed mentors to turn my life around. And so that's why I'm so passionate about mentorship, because it was out of necessity. So I can totally relate. I think one of the big kind of points that we make in Ambition in Motion is that when you are at a point of discomfort, only when you're at a point of discomfort is when you can actually innovate and grow. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did.
Exactly. I mean, it was trial and error at the beginning, but I've always operated on an old axiom that my father used to say, and I totally still believe it to this day. And I think it probably will mean something to your audience, is it's not what you know, it's who you know.
So
right?
True.
It really is. You have to find the people to get you to the right people. You can have all the degrees in the world, but if you don't know how to find where you need to be and who you need to talk to, it's not going to work.
Yeah, so true. And I think, what do they say? 70% of all job offers go to somebody who knows somebody within their network.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's all about who you know. And I love the part of your story where you said people felt comfortable going to you, being a catalyst for connection. And that makes me want to ask the students in our audience a quick question. And that is, when is the last time that you helped connect somebody to somebody else? Doesn't necessarily have to be for a professional opportunity. It could be for a personal opportunity. Be like, hey, someone was looking to go to a new hair stylist. I recommended this person. Like, when is the last time that you made a connection for somebody else, and what was the reason behind it? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about times that you as a student or as someone in our audience have been a connector for other people. I love to learn about that story. So Janice, what does genuine networking mean to you?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is authenticity. Be yourself. And I think let me just throw that back at you for a second and say, when you talk about networking, what's your vision of it? Is it going to a formal event? Is it networking informally? Is it online, offline? So that I know exactly, because there's a little bit of a difference I mean, there's similarities, but there's a little bit of a difference depending on the situation.
That's a great question. I mean, I think for all students, it really depends. I think for a lot of students, they're in a phase. I think for a lot of students right now, the stereotypical way of networking is you go to a career fair, you shake hands with people at this booth, you have superficial relationships. But I want to challenge students to think outside the box. Use LinkedIn, use opportunities, email, picking up the phone call and calling somebody, and just building.
How novel.
Yeah, crazy. Just reaching out to somebody who's got, it seems like on paper, an area of expertise that you would love to learn a little bit more about, and seeing if they would be willing to have a conversation with you. So I believe the answer to your question is all three, but I think sometimes as students, we get our head in a box of like, well, my career service website says these are the 15 jobs that are posted. I'm going to apply for all 15, and I'm going to go to the career fair, and that's it. Because that's what you've limited yourself to. But I think you can really help enlighten us on how we can expand our world and our mind out of the box.
Okay, so let's start with the career fair type event. So before you go, I always suggest that you do your homework. Who's going to be there? Who there that's exhibiting? Because usually you can see the exhibitors list before you go. Know who those people are and know who you want to target to speak to. Okay, that's the first thing. And I would never, ever, I don't know, it's a long time since I've ever been to a career fair, but I always feel like it's about making that initial connection stand out from the crowd. So it's not about, here's me, here's who I am, here's my resume. It's more about, I'm so excited to meet you. I'm really excited about your company. I have a few questions. Is now a good time to ask them, or would it be okay for me to connect with you or contact you afterwards? So show an interest in the other people. And then that really applies to everywhere that you go, is showing an interest and being curious, having something that will light them up to ask them about. Show that you've done a little bit of homework about that company or about that position or that person. I mean, career fairs aren't the place to, interview for a job. They're the place, informally they are in a sense, but not, it's more about making a good first impression, right?
You are teasing them, and that's exactly it. You are trying to get them to be curious to learn more. And this is why I'm such advocate against elevator pitches, because most elevator pitches are all about me, me, me. And I'll be honest with you, people don't care about you. They care about themselves. So if you can talk about them, they're going to be so much more interested in who you are because you cared about who they are. And you might think to yourself, well, how are they supposed to care about me if they don't know anything about me? The answer is they don't care about you. They care about themselves. So
now I'm going to suggest that applies whether it's online or offline as well, because the first impression, let's say you did meet somebody at a career fair that they could see the twinkle in your eye. They liked the questions that you asked them, and so they've jotted your name down and they are going to check you out. The first thing they're going to do is Google you. They may first of all go right to LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is a place where most, I think, college students should have a presence, definitely. And the first thing they're going to do is look at your LinkedIn profile, and first impressions count. Same thing, right? First impressions count. They haven't even spoken. They spoke to you in person, but now they want to see who you are based on your profile and so on. And so I always say first impressions, make sure it's a good one. Make sure your photo on your LinkedIn, that's the other part of what I do, is I train people how to set up their LinkedIn profiles in such a way that highlights them to their best, right? Have a proper banner. Don't use the default. Have a good headshot. Make it be professional if possible. But if you can't afford a professional headshot, please don't use a selfie. Have somebody take a picture of you so that you just see head and shoulders and the whites of your eyes are showing, the sparkle in your eye, right? Make it close up enough that people can see that. With our phones today, we can get a great photo. So as much as that's not my preference, it's a good start. And then make your headline make sense. So that's details, but I just wanted to mention that first impressions are really important.
Yeah, so true. First impressions are so important. I think this is a question maybe later down that I've got on my list, but I love to talk about it now because it seems pretty relevant, and that is body language. I would imagine when it comes to first impressions, body language has something to do with it. I'd love to learn your thoughts on body language.
Absolutely. So when you're in person, of course it does. The very first thing is eye contact. Look somebody in the eye when you're talking to them, right? And I have to admit, I have a hard time when I'm on camera remembering to look at the place where the camera actually is. But yes, definitely face-to-face. You want to make sure you make eye contact. And the other thing about that, here's another piece around body language. When you're in a situation where there's, first of all, just two people, make sure you're facing square on and not sort of with one foot to the side, because it looks like you're ready to leave before you've had a conversation. And the other thing about body language is, when you go into a room full of people and you think, oh my God, who am I going to talk to? Everybody looks like they're already talking, and in groups. If you're in a situation where you're talking to 2 or 3 people, it's a really good thing to do in that situation, to be in an open stance. So have it so that you're not face on, that allows other people to come and join you, because that's a really good thing, to be able to welcome other people in, and people notice which groups it's okay to go and, infiltrate, right? So to my mind, those things all play a part in how you network.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, and can body language even play a role even on the phone? Does that even have an impact?
Many years ago, I used to teach soft skills to business professionals, and part of that was telephone courtesy. And one of the first things we always said was, make sure you smile over the phone, because people can tell, and they can still to this day.
So I'd love to transition for a little bit because I think sometimes as students, we think to ourselves like, okay, just about that first job, I can kind of forget about networking after that. I'd love to learn from your story. How has networking influenced your career movement and path?
Well, all of my business that I've done since I left those jobs, it all is so importantly related to referrals and connections, and those don't happen without networking. You know, so it's funny because it happened to me today. This morning I did, no, what day is it? Wednesday. Yesterday morning I did a video Facebook Live for a friend of mine. She's in Georgia, and she had a business group, a group of professionals that she wanted me to talk about LinkedIn, and I did. So then afterwards, I got some LinkedIn connection requests and some emails from people asking me for more information. Now, one of the things that I make myself that I'm proud of is that I respond to people quickly, and that's important. And people are usually surprised. Oh my goodness, I didn't expect to hear back from you so soon, right? Well, that's how you make a good first impression, and that you always do what you say you're going to do. That's really important. Always do what you say you're going to do. Because if you say, I'm going to call you next week for coffee, most people don't. They forget. They're on to the next thing. So how it's affected my career, to get back to what you asked me, is that I always treat people the way I want to be treated. And I build that reputation, I hope, of being that person that can be depended on, is that a word? And that I'll always, you can rely on me to do what I said I'm going to do. And therefore you build your reputation based on that. That's all you have, right? That's all you have is your reputation. So you want to make sure that if somebody refers you to somebody, that you make them proud, that you hold up your end of the deal, right? Because it's all about referrals. And that's how networking and making good connections. You have to really cherish the connections that you have and treat them like gold. Because don't just give their names to anybody. Make sure that people that you refer them to know that you take pride in having those connections, and you want them to be treated with kid gloves. Does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I think that is really relevant, because I think, it can be easy to think, oh, wow, I'm going to refer my friend. Let's say I was at a career fair. I interned with this company last summer. I got a buddy who's looking for an internship, but I also know my buddy, and he's maybe not the most reliable person in the world, or maybe he isn't fully engaged with his professional aspirations and what he wants to accomplish with his career and his life. That might not necessarily be the best recommendation, because it potentially has an impact on you. I mean, you may leverage that person who you're introducing your buddy to as a referral down the line and be like, hey, your buddy accepted this internship and then didn't show up for the first 3 days, or showed up late, or just screwed around and didn't really take the internship seriously. That's a reflection on you.
That's right. Exactly. Now, one thing that I was just thinking about is that your the university students or graduates, probably a good place to practice your networking skills are chamber type events, business trade show, or trade, we call them here like board of trade, or a chamber of commerce, or even a networking group like BNI. I don't know if you've heard of BNI, Business Network International. It's worth it sometimes to go as a guest to one of these events and practice your networking skills. When you're a guest at these things, yes, it may cost you breakfast or lunch or whatever, but you get the chance to talk to people who know how to network, and it gives you an opportunity to practice those skills, to know not your because I'm with you, I'm not big on those scripted, what do you call them? Elevator speeches. Because I tend to wing it depending on who I'm talking to. But one of the things I will say is if someone asks you, what do? You want to come up with a line. I remember a guy once who was in the network marketing business said something. He went to a party over Christmas one time and they asked him what he did. And he said something bizarre like, I don't even remember what it was now. I should remember. Something about zebras or camels or something. And it was something that really was, out in left field. But number one, he was remembered from it. And number two, it was a curiosity factor that made people say, okay, come on, what do you really do? Right? And it's just say something that maybe makes them want to ask you something. You say, hey, well, I'll talk to you about what I do later. Let me hear what you do. And always put it on to the other person.
I love that. I love that point. So I think, one, you made a really great, I think you got a great nugget of wisdom there that you mentioned quickly, but I think maybe less than 1% of students watching this right now have actually done this or ever considered taking advantage of it. Go to your local Chamber of Commerce. Your Chamber of Commerce exists, and Chamber of Commerce exists in every town in the United States. Mm-hmm. They have meetings. They have weekly meetings. They've got monthly meetings. They will let you come in for free, especially as a college student, to meet people. Now, you might think to yourself, well, I don't necessarily want to work for any of these companies.
Doesn't matter.
You have no idea who you're going to meet. You have no idea how they're going to react.
You don't know who they know.
Bingo. That's exactly it. And so what often, I know just because I started a business while I was in college and stayed in that college town, and I stayed in that city even after I graduated, was that there was a lot of big professionals, people who worked at Fortune 500 companies that have massive connections all over the world that have just also live in the city. And they go to these events, and you would have never known that, but you would never have realized that unless you would have gone to these events. The people who are at the career fairs, the people that go to the career fairs are used to having people come to them. You really have to do a lot to kind of set yourself apart, and you're not really playing on an even playing field because whatever's going on in their day could be influencing how they perceive you. So if they just got in a fight with their significant other right before going to the career fair, I can tell you they're probably not going to be too keen on any person that comes to their booth during that meeting that night. There's so many extrinsic factors that play into it. You almost like make an analogy because I'm in the entrepreneurial space and I'm used to pitching my company and talking to potential investors. What I've observed is that when a person says that they're an angel investor, almost always they're the most difficult person to pitch because they're used to getting a bunch of people pitching towards them. Mm-hmm. But if you know somebody who's just like, hey, I'm interested in getting interested in getting involved with startups, but I don't really brand myself as an angel investor, they're typically the best people because they're not really getting pitched by anybody. And if you are able to convince them, you're only convincing one person. They're not competing against other startups of which to invest in. And I think that can apply to you as a student, where if you're going to a chamber event or a BNI event and you're the only student there, you're playing with house cards. All of these professionals are going to take a keen interest in you because you're the only one that took the initiative to step up and join.
That's really, really true. There's one other piece I want to add to that, and it actually goes back to what I've already said, but here's the thing. When you go to that event and you are the only student there, or you see that there's an advantage, whatever, you know what, it doesn't matter, because you need to go with the idea and the mindset of who am I going to meet and what can I find out about them. You really have to go with that mindset of it's not about me, because that will happen as a result of you being a curious, interested person in other people.
So
that's so important, because, I remember going to a lot of networking events. I don't do it so much anymore. I network a lot on LinkedIn, but going to those events and seeing people come in with these beautifully crafted business flyers and business cards, and everything was beautifully put together, and they go in there, and all they do is they're handing these things out and shoving them in people's faces. Where do they go? They go in the garbage. So I always say, are you a connector or are you a collector?
That's a great way of putting it. That's exactly it. It's almost like, are you a giver or are you a taker? Are you someone who's giving life to relationships that can happen? Or are you just taking people's cards and, trying to keep them all for yourself? Because the thing on the flip side of that, I gave the example of like, okay, well, hey, my buddy doesn't really take things seriously. I don't know if I'd recommend him. On the other hand, if you've got a friend or if you've got an acquaintance that gives a great first impression, you've already had an internship, if you think to yourself like, well, I just have to hoard all my connections, I don't want to connect to anybody, that's a horrible thing to do, because I can personally say, just from running a mentor program where I'm connecting people all the time, that when you are the person that is creating the relationship and helping build that, you are growing your own brand and reputation by making that happen. As long as both people are prepared and are going to do something with it, you look amazing. And you don't have to do anything except for make the introduction. So it's a great thing to do. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, then the next piece, once you've made that introduction and it became some kind of a successful situation for the person you referred them to, that person now, to build their reputation, must never forget to say thank you to you. They must never forget to show their appreciation for what you did. And that happens a lot. People just go one way forward, and they don't, because it's all, again, about your reputation and about building your brand around being authentic, but being caring and showing that you care to people, because the law of reciprocity, it works. So what you put out there comes back tenfold.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. And I know one thing that I think a lot of students are probably grappling with right now is like, oh wow, so if I go to this Chamber of Commerce event or this BNI event, or even if I go to this networking event and I know nobody, like what if I get rejected? I think that's like a big common concern that most students have. Actually, you know what? I want to take a quick moment to pause and ask our audience a real quick, what is your biggest concern when it comes to networking and putting yourself out there? I would love to have you write that in the comments section. I'd love to learn what your greatest fear is with putting yourself out there. Then I'd love to transition to you, Janice, and ask you, are people genuinely helpful? Generally, for the most part, are they helpful? Do they want to help people and see them succeed?
You mean in that situation when someone comes and they're petrified and they're not comfortable about it? Well, some people are. But here's the thing to think about too when you're going to an event. I already said do your homework. So these are the three people that you want to, at least the three people that you want to meet. The first person is the organizer. So usually there's a check-in and someone at a registration desk of some sort. So if you don't know who the organizer was, usually you can ask the registration people to point you to that person. And sometimes, and I've done this, sometimes I've called the organizer ahead of time and said, this is new for me. I'm new to this, or I'm visiting the city and I'd like to come to your networking event. So I wanted to introduce myself ahead of time. Okay, so that's the organizer. You want to meet, if there's a speaker, you want to make sure you meet the speaker, because who's going to be one of the most influential people? The person that they've invited to speak, if there is a speaker, right? So you want to make sure that you go up and introduce yourself to the speaker after they've spoken, so you can say something about it, and make sure that you make a connection. And the third person you want to meet, and this again can get help from the registration people or the organizer, is who at this event would you be able to introduce me to that is a connector, that knows a lot of people? I would really like to meet that person. So you ask, right? So those are the three people that you want to meet. And don't be afraid, because everyone's done it for the first time once. And I think the other piece I would say to that is go armed with 3 or 4 questions in your, the back of your mind. For example, this is my first time here, Garrett. What brings you to this event? Or how is this an event that you come to on a regular basis? Why? Ask them questions. Do you network? Do you generally network in this way? Do you have other places that you go that might be a good place to check out for somebody looking for a job or getting into such and such an industry, right? That's another thing, by the way. These things just come. If somebody that's is looking for a job in a certain sector, engineering or law or manufacturing or whatever that sector is, look for association events and find out whether you can come as a guest. And then you're in the midst of the kind of people you want to meet.
So true. I love that advice. I think that's great. So kind of to recap really quick, what you should be looking at when you're going to an event: who's the organizer, who's the speaker, and can the organizer introduce you to connectors? Those are the three people. I think that is gold when it comes to advice. I think that's great. I love to learn, Janice, when it comes to the actual conversation itself. I know you mentioned have like 4 questions in the back of your mind. What does it take to have a meaningful conversation? What does it take to have a meaningful relationship with somebody?
Wow. That's a great question, because I think there is the art of conversation, right? There really is. And you and I don't think have any problem with that, because we are extroverts, or at least we appear to be extroverts, and and we're curious. But there are people who aren't as curious. They're more introverted and they're not as comfortable. So for those people, I would say to just focus on one thing at a time, and don't worry about having to. I'm sidetracking a little bit. I'll come back, but don't worry about having to meet 10 people. Just focus on maybe meeting 2 or 3, because that's all you might be able to handle, and that's okay, right? But what would make those conversations meaningful is, again, make it about them. Be able to ask questions. Show some complete, authentic interest in what that person does. Honestly, there isn't anybody like, I'm going to say I have 2 daughters. One of them is an extrovert and one of them is an introvert. And they're very different in how they approach things. And so I can see, like, my extroverted daughter, you can put her like me in a room and we can work that room without any problem and get to know as many people as possible. My introverted daughter, she can carry on a very good conversation, but she wants to keep it just, I'm happy to just talk to one person. So they both work. It's just they have different ways of going about things. And I think, I don't know, I really can't express enough that you need to just be curious and interested. However, here's another tip around the conversation piece. It's not just having the conversation, but when you're at a networking event, sometimes people find it really hard to leave a conversation. Right? How do I get out of this conversation? This person's going on and on and on, and I don't want to hear anymore, right? And that's an art in itself too. So you have to be able to say, thanks so much. It was really a pleasure talking to you, even though, by the way, here's the best compliment ever. When you go to leave a conversation and somebody says to you, I've really enjoyed talking to you. It was so nice to get to know you. And you haven't said anything. They've done all the talking. Think about that, right?
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, but in any event, just being able to say thank you so much. It was really nice to meet you. I need to go hit the bathroom, or I need to go grab another drink. Whatever excuse it takes to get you out of there, you just do it as quietly and quickly as you can. If though you're real, and so leave the conversation on a high. But if you really click with somebody, that's when you're able to say, you know, I'd love to take this conversation further, but I need to network a little bit more while I'm here and take advantage of the people that I need to get hold of. Would you be open to a call next week and set up a coffee date or whatever? And if they say yes, and you get their card or their contact info in your phone or whatever, now you're in control for the next step.
I love that. I love that, the way that you put that. And I think when you start building that rapport, when you feel like you've got that click with somebody else, how do you determine when is the right time to be vulnerable with somebody in a conversation? Like, when's the right time to be open and just say, hey, here's what's going on with my world, and, you know, here's an area that I'm, you know, essentially, when do you determine when is the right time to be vulnerable?
Say that last part again.
Oh yeah, when is the right time to determine when is, how do you determine when is the right time to be vulnerable?
Well, you'll know, because if you really connect with somebody and you both feel that you want to continue the conversation, I think there's a time where you say, you know, maybe the speaker's going to speak, or maybe the time is running out, or maybe, and by the way, don't get to an event late. Always go early. Always go early and always stay till the end, because that's when stuff happens. But that also gives you that opportunity to choose, right? And I think you're able to say, you know, I'm really enjoying our conversation, but I'm supposed to be networking, right? So, you know, are you open to continuing the conversation? And they say, of course, we should go for coffee, right? Absolutely. Let me get your information and I will follow up with you. How's the best way to connect with you? Text, phone, email? And they'll tell you, and then you must do what you say you're going to do. And follow up when you say you're going to do it.
I like that a lot. I will say, my personal experience just from facilitating mentor relationships, I believe vulnerability is, when in doubt, be vulnerable. And I say that, I know that might sound crazy. Obviously, you need to feel it out. You don't want to, like, just jump right in. But I know for the students in this program, I've shared my story. I totally opened up like a book. I shared that because I know that in order to build trust, vulnerability must come first. Trust does not come before vulnerability. Vulnerability always precedes trust. So if you want to build a trust relationship, you want to build a deep relationship with somebody, be the first person to take that first step. Like, if you're the bigger person willing to be vulnerable first, other people will reciprocate, because you are willing to be mature and be vulnerable first.
Yeah, that's great advice too. Totally.
That's awesome. So I want to ask the audience one last question really quick, and that is, I feel like you and I have really covered some awesome next steps. I think, Janice, you've created some really great ideas for the students to leverage, in terms of, like, totally out of the box ideas that probably were not even considering before, in terms of how to network in a genuine way and how to expand their network. I'd love to learn from the students and their perspective. What is one thing that you are going to commit to, that you can commit to, after this workshop towards expanding your network? Post in the comment section. By the way, if you've already got an internship or a job offer, amazing. Does not mean your networking stops. What is something you can do this week to continually expand your network? Something that you learned in this workshop? Post in the comment section. I love to learn. You know, one final question, Janice, I wanted to ask you was, how do you navigate introductions? When is the right time to ask for an introduction? And rather, is it appropriate to ask for an introduction?
So I don't know that at the networking event is the place, right? I think that's still the getting to know you phase, the honeymoon phase, if you will, a little more surface. But if you've taken the opportunity to be vulnerable and to ask to continue the conversation, when you speak to the person the next time, then I think it is. Personally, I don't know. I think they have to feel that you're, you know, that you don't have an ulterior motive. Because you have to be really careful that, or be right up front in the first place and say, you know, if someone says to you, so, you know, what brings you to this event? And you up front say, you know, I'm really looking to meet some people in the ABC company, to be honest. Do you know anybody in that company? So that's direct and honest. On the other hand, it might just be, I'm here because I want to meet the local some members of the local business community, and I want to learn, what's important to people in the industry, because I'm just coming out of school and I'm just trying to get to know how things work, right? And then people will adjust accordingly. I know you asked me one last question, but I have to ask this, or at least mention this, if you don't mind.
Please.
How are students today who are going into that situation, how do they primarily communicate? Is it by text? Is it by email? I know it's not by phone. So which is it?
What are you talking about, going into a networking event?
So, say that again?
Are you talking about for going into like a career fair or a networking event?
No, I'm talking about just, period, but with situations like that. What would be their first go-to?
Typically, what I've observed is when a career fair is going on, they'll learn about it from their university. Typically, their university is marketing it. There'll be flyers on the walls. There'll be emails that go out. So they just kind of show up and they get dressed up. They've got an idea of what to do to prepare for a career fair, but typically it's pretty awkward. I'll be honest. I think most students would attest. It's pretty awkward at first because there's not too much structure there, and it's very superficial. Like the conversations are 30 seconds long. So it's really difficult to build rapport with somebody. So I think that's kind of like the setting that we're looking at here.
So each person needs to go there with the attitude that they have something to offer, and they are unique, and what they have to offer is special. And so you have to hold your head up high and go there with the idea that you have something to offer, in the right, wherever you want to be, and speak from that. But again, remember, it's not the job interview, it's just the first impression, right?
So true. And I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's all about really teasing them. Back to the whole point that you made earlier of just like, you're just trying to get a good first impression. Now, one thing I want to add onto the whole introductions component of it is the ease of which you make introducing yourself happen. I think oftentimes we'll do the thing where you kind of say like, hey, I'll be honest, I'm looking to connect with people in this area. Even after you build rapport, what so often happens is people run in their own lane. I'm running to my lane. And the likelihood that I can think of the person that you're trying to connect with right now in this given moment in time, very low, very, very low. Out of my entire network, it's a low likelihood that I can pinpoint the exact person that you're thinking of. But fortunately, we've got LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, if you're connected with somebody, you can look at who they're connected with. And so you can set up filters to try to find like people that you'd be interested in. And so what you can do is say, hey, I noticed that you're connected with these 5 people on LinkedIn. I recognize I don't know like really intimately everybody on LinkedIn, but if you know maybe 1 or 2 of those people, hey, here's an email introduction template that you could copy and paste. If you wouldn't mind introducing me, that would be great. So it's just kind of what I'm laying out is like the ease of making the introduction is like, literally, do you know this person? Yes. Here's an email introduction. All you have to do is copy and paste. All you have to do is just copy and paste their email, CC you, and they're done. It's a pretty easy email introduction.
As long as the person that you're asking has already feels comfortable about you and wants to open up their network to you.
And that's exactly it. And that's where rapport comes first. But I think that's a really good, great add-on to that. So Janice, this was awesome. I feel like we covered so much in terms of networking in a genuine way. I feel like you are a wealth of knowledge. Seriously, thank you so much for being here. Janice, final question. How can students find you? How can they connect with you? How can they learn more about what you are working on?
Thanks, Garrett. Basically, they can find me at Janice Porter. It's JANICE, janiceporter.com. All of what I do is on my website, and they can connect with me on LinkedIn, and it's LinkedIn /Janice Porter. And I'm not that hard to find. And I would ask that anybody that was in your class here in your session, that when they do make a connection on LinkedIn, that they let me know that they came from you as a connector, and that right away builds rapport, right?
So true.
So yeah, we'd love to hear from some of your students. And my focus is basically teaching people how to build a strong LinkedIn profile, how to use LinkedIn to grow a business or to find a job. And so you want to make sure that it looks the way it needs to look. And also how to retain connections and show people appreciation.
I love that. Janice, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited for the students to fully let this information sink in. Students, thank you all for being here this evening. I'm excited for you to continue your mentor relationships with your mentors. Have a good rest of your night. Thanks for being here, Janice.
You're welcome.